teenagers who trade pizza delivery for marijuana smuggling, and they ended up building a $60 million illegal business.
This couldn't be the Nate that I knew. I mean, he was a nerd, but sure enough, there he is, facing trial.
Clark and a friend started smuggling millions of dollars worth of pot from Canada into North Idaho.
And then all of a sudden, the world just changes and you've got millions of dollars and everyone wants to be your friend because they're attracted to the money and the power. It's like a crime, teen dramedy thriller.
A teenager running a $38 million criminal empire sounds insane.
Yo.
But for Nate Norman, it was real life. Even
What the
crazier,
fuck?
most of his crew were also teenagers.
You
And
heard of
together
this?
they built one of the biggest smuggling operations in
this is
America.
crazy.
And through it all, these kids had one rule: don't let mom and dad find out. This is the crazy story of how a high school kid created a $38 billion drug
Damn,
empire.
who the fuck is this? Pablo Escobar?
Visual Venture, and you are awesome.
What the
The
fuck?
last person you would expect. Nate Norman was the last person anyone would ever call a criminal mastermind, and there were three big reasons why. First, his age. Nate was only 19, still a teenager. Second, he had a reputation for being a really good kid, the kind of person that would go out of his way to help somebody. He
Nah,
was even
bro. Pablo Escobar would not be able to be stopped in today's society, bro. Dead ass serious. Dead ass serious.
story about how Nate helped an old lady who lived across the street. Her driveway would get blocked every time the snowplow would go by, and Nate would always run over and shovel her driveway. But anytime the old lady offered him money, he turned it down. That's just who he was. The third reason Nate seemed harmless was where he grew up. Nate lived in a quiet lakeside city in Idaho. It looked like something off a postcard. It had spectacular mountains, clear lakes, and clean air. Life there was calm. Nothing about it screamed danger. In summary, Nate was a sweet, small-town kid with zero criminal tendencies. At least, that's how it seemed. But there was one thing about
My
Nate
dad
that
got
changed
some
everything.
crazy
One
stories.
flaw that
ABT
set him
Pablo
on the
Escobar
path to
BC.
becoming
He
a
lived in
drug
Colombia
kingpin.
during
He
that
reportedly
time.
had a
Nah, bro, your
puppy
dad
dog
goated
need
as
for
hell.
approval, and that desperate need would send him down a dark path. Nate was never one of the popular kids. Friends described him as a fat, funny kid. He was one of those guys.
Sebastian! Oh my god.
Pick on. And for Nate, that stung. He wasn't book smart either. Nate struggled in class.
Oh my
and
God,
eventually
dead
dropped
ass
out of high
Sebastian.
school. While his classmates planned for college, Nate
Oh
got
my
a job
God.
delivering pizza. But like most teenagers, Nate wanted to be cool. He wanted to be noticed and admired. Soon he figured out how. He realized that there was one thing that could make anyone a little more popular: weed. And for demonetization's sake, we're going to be referring to marijuana as grass. A lot of teens in his town smoked even though it was illegal. Grass was always in demand, but it was hard to get. So anyone who had it instantly became more popular. Soon, Nate made sure he always had some to give away. According to one report, having grass gave Nate a quick way to earn the love, or at least tolerance, of his peers. And for a kid
Damn.
like Nate, that meant everything. But then Nate stumbled onto something bigger, something
Yo.
that could give him more than just popularity. It could give him money, power, and status. It was 2001. Back then, Nate spent his days delivering pizza and hanging out with his friends. One day, while with his friend Topher Clark, they came across a magazine.
no.
The cover
Put
story
your
was
dick
about
away.
the booming marijuana industry in Canada. After reading the article, Nate summarized it this way: if you want good grass, go to the Canadian border with a backpack. Across the border, massive farms were producing some of the highest grade grass in the world. It was called BC Bud. In Canada, a pound of BC Bud cost about $1,400. But back in Idaho, that same pound sold for more than double.
Damn!
Topher immediately saw the opportunity. Buy cheap in Canada, bring it back across the border, sell it high in Idaho, repeat. The numbers were appealing. Law enforcement estimated the sale of BC Bud is a $7 billion.
Yo, bro, at what point, though, when you doing all of this, it's like, damn, I've made enough money. I haven't got caught yet. Maybe I should stop. But then again, the dopamine rush of a nigga that's doing that.
Didn't Reggie also come from Canada too?
Reggie. You talking about the strand? I don't know. I'm not a weed guru. But like the dopamine rush of a nigga that's doing all of that, it's like, damn, I haven't got caught yet. Maybe I will never get caught until they get caught.
When you're that deep in, it's pretty hard to get
Yeah,
out of
bruh.
it.
Yeah, bruh. I know. I just thought of that shit, bruh. I know Reggie means shit weed, but I'm saying, like, I don't know. I'm not no weed guru. I don't know.
A year industry.
I don't know where that
That
shit
meant
came
there
from.
was so
I thought-
much money
like,
to be made. Nate checked
Reggie-
the map. The Canadian
It's just
border
like
was so
anything.
close, just a
I
few
think like
hours away
Reggie
from
is
the town.
subjective.
But
If
there was
you feel
just
like the weed
one
is shit, you
problem.
gonna call
How
it
could
Reggie,
they
no matter
smuggle
where it
pot
come from.
across the border without getting caught? The border between the United States and Canada is the longest international border in the world. There are official checkpoints where officers inspect every person and every vehicle. They check passports, search cars, and stop anything illegal from getting through. Getting caught smuggling meant years in prison. But people still did it. Experienced smugglers hid pot in buses, mobile homes, and even horse trailers. They packed it so well that officers missed it during inspections. Some smugglers even went further. One dug a 360-foot underground tunnel to move pot across
What
the
the
border.
fuck?
Others used kayaks to
How long did it take them to do that?
slip through waterways. Some even flew small planes over the border. With these kids, Nate and Topher didn't have those resources. Their only option was to hike through the woods. In certain areas, the border cuts through forests, lakes, and
Whoever
mountains,
did that
making it
clearly got
impossible
hella
to
money.
Nah,
monitor every
facts.
inch. Nate and Topher figured they could hike the 7-mile border crossing through the forest on foot. It was risky. The terrain was rough. The wilderness was unpredictable. There were wild animals in the woods, but they were willing to risk everything, even their lives, to make it happen. The crossing. Nate and Topher scraped together every dollar they
Yeah.
could find. Between odd jobs,
But,
borrowed
like,
cash,
damn,
and
how much
savings,
you
they
paying
pulled
a nigga just to
together
dig that, though?
$1,500. They drove up to Creston, a small
Money gotta
farming
be, like,
town
the
near
pay
the
gotta be
Canadian
crazy.
border. Then they headed to a local bar searching for a dealer. Within hours, they found one. The boys paid $1,400 for a pound of BC bud. Then they stuffed it into a backpack and left. That was easy. The hard part was getting it across the border without getting caught. Their plan was straightforward. Nate would drive back across the border acting like a normal traveler. Meanwhile, Topher would hike 7 miles through the woods carrying the product in his backpack. It sounded simple, but it wasn't. There were grizzly bears and mountain lions in those woods, and a wrong turn could get you lost for days. If Topher didn't make it back before nightfall, you could freeze, get lost, or run straight into predators. Still, they went through with it. The journey began hour after hour. Topher pushed forward through the woods.
Hiking for
Finally, he
7
made it to the other
hours?
side safely. Nate was waiting to meet him. The first run proved the impossible was possible. It was terrifying, risky, and dumb, but it worked. And now they wanted to do it again. Back home, Nate and Topher sold the entire pound in a couple of hours. They doubled their money. The speed of that first sale made one thing clear. Demand was high. And now Nate and Topher had the supply, so they went back.
Most of the shitty
This
stuff
time
comes
they
from
bought 2
Mexico?
pounds.
Damn.
It sold out instantly. Within weeks, Nate and Topher were making regular runs.
I would
a
think
few
that the good shit
pounds
come
at
from
a
there.
time. Each crossing was equally
I would've been wrong,
dangerous,
too.
but every success made them bolder. At first, they sold only to friends and acquaintances. Even on that small scale, they doubled, sometimes tripled their profits. Soon, they were making 20 or 30 grand
it.
a week. For a 19-year-old high school dropout or anyone at all, it was life-changing money. But it wasn't enough. Nate had a target. His plan was to make $3 million and get out. But success has a way of changing plans. Making all that money gave Nate something he never had before. Soon, he didn't want to stop at $3 million.
Exactly,
He wanted to build
bruh.
an empire. Nate and Topher realized they couldn't keep doing everything themselves. So Nate turned to the only people he trusted, friends and old classmates.
Bro, is
Within
this
months,
is
Nate
there a
had
movie
crew.
about this,
None
bro?
of them were hardened criminals. Most never broke the law before, but they all wanted easy money. When their operation was at its height, it included at least 32 people. Topher was in charge of the new recruits. He led them on the 7-mile hikes through the woods. But now that they had money, they upgraded. They bought new boots to make the trek easier, night vision goggles to see in the dark, camouflage gear to blend into the forest, first aid kits, bear spray. They even bought a spray that was supposed to make them invisible to heat sensors. The system was simple. The crew crossed the border 6 at a time, carrying bags filled with cash. Sometimes they carried as much as $400,000 in a single trip. In Canada, they would
Damn.
exchange the money for product. Then they would hike back through the woods with backpacks full of pot. Cash went one way, product came back. But it never stopped being dangerous. One time, the crew got lost in the woods and nearly froze to death. Luckily, no one got seriously hurt, so they kept going. They even started enjoying the trips. Nate sometimes joined them. He later said the adrenaline rush of walking in the woods at night. The thrill is addicting. Soon, Nate was supplying entire dealer networks across Idaho. The crew was flush with cash. Then they hit a new
But you know what's so
problem. Although they were
crazy,
making
though?
millions
Like, bro, the fact that they're doing this in Idaho where nobody would expect that this is going on. Idaho gang. Idaho?
They couldn't spend it freely. Almost everyone involved was in their teens and early 20s. Most still were living with their moms. They didn't want their parents finding out what they were doing. Flashing sudden wealth would raise suspicion. Cops could even start asking questions. After risking their lives and freedom, the kids were rich but trapped. That's when Nate's puppy dog need for approval kicked in again. Nate didn't just want the money. He wanted respect. And now that he was rich, he thought he could buy it. So Nate started spending. His friends followed suit. And from there, things got out of control fast. Young, wild, and rich.
It's like at that point when you make that much money, bro.
His friends didn't hold back. They bought four-wheelers,
like, bro,
jet skis, and
you
gold
gotta spend
jewelry.
smart.
They also threw massive parties that every kid in town heard about. But their biggest splurge and the hardest thing to hide was on enormous lakefront homes. Some
Bro,
of them
like,
bought,
why would
others
you do
rented,
that?
but these weren't ordinary houses. They were mansions. Nate's place had 8 bedrooms and an indoor swimming pool. Overnight, Nate and his crew became the coolest kids in town.
It's like, bro,
Maybe
like,
Nate was enjoying
niggas want to start buying the most outrageous shit when they get money. Like, bro, why are you trying to go buy a property and you're only 19 years old with no GED, no high school diploma? Like, bro, how, what the fuck? It's like, bro, you have nothing to show for, like, how you making this money. And you know it's illegal. You're going to get your ass caught, bro. Like, niggas be dead ass stupid. It's like, bro, what the fuck?
His newfound popularity too much, because soon he came up with a ridiculous idea. He wanted to look like a kingpin. People said Nate started acting like Tony Montana from the movie Scarface. Scarface is one of the most iconic films ever made. It follows a Cuban immigrant, Tony Montana, who builds a massive...
I'm dead ass finna watch Scarface when I get off stream tonight, bro.
Tony Montana became the
serious.
blueprint for wannabe drug lords everywhere. He wore flashy suits and gold chains. He carried firearms constantly. He spoke with a distinct accent. Nate was reportedly inspired by that. So Nate started talking with an accent, copying Montana's swagger. People said he became cocky and disrespectful. Nate also bought several firearms, including an automatic one. He even started dating a stripper 7 years older than him. Topher, Nate's partner from the very beginning, watched the transformation unfold.
Wow.
Topher described it this way. Nate went from having this humble personality to thinking he was this badass smuggler no one could touch. He would drive around town with his 24-inch rims and diamond chains, listening to hardcore rap. Just this perfect drug dealer image. And people were starting to fear him because he had power and money. Nate wasn't the same person anymore. And Nate wasn't just playing a part. He started using substances, particularly white powder. It wasn't surprising because Tony Montana
lost the
from
plot.
Scarface did the same. But the substances made Nate paranoid. And now that he had weapons, it also made him dangerous. There's one story that shows just how dangerous. One night, Nate and his crew threw a huge party. Over 100 people packed the house. Everyone was drinking, dancing, and having fun. Then a fight broke out over a girl. The place erupted. People were yelling, shoving, and screaming. In the chaos, Nate grabbed one of his biggest weapons and shot it off in the house. Someone who was there said it sounded like a bomb went off. Everyone ran out of the party screaming. That was the new Nate. Nate the kingpin. Meanwhile, Topher was becoming anxious. He wanted to quit the business. After all, he already made enough to live comfortably. But when he told Nate he wanted out, Nate refused. Remember, Topher was the one who trained the runners. He was the one keeping the product moving safely through the woods. Nate couldn't afford
You think he had a
to lose
Draco?
it, so he offered
I think he had a
Topher
Tommy
more
gun,
money to
bruh.
stay.
You know he wanted to be
Topher
Tony
reluctantly
Montana. He
agreed.
probably had a
Deep
Tommy gun,
down,
bro.
Topher knew something bad was coming.
But a
He told
Draco
himself,
do
"This
sound
is
like a
going to
fucking
have
bomb,
a
bro. That shit
horrible
is scary as
ending."
fuck.
He had no idea how right he was. Nate and his crew thought the cops were their biggest problem. They were wrong. Other smuggling crews were watching them closely. To them, Nate and his boys weren't just kids. They were competition. And in this business, competition was deadly. Ruthless rivals. Just a few miles away, another young smuggler was making moves. His name was Brendan Butler. Brendan was only 20, close to Nate's age, and he ran his own grass operation in the same area as Nate. One article described Brendan as Nate's most serious rival. Brendan was very different than Nate. Nate was a high school dropout, but Brendan graduated with honors from a private prep school.
Damn.
Nate wasn't book smart, but Brendan excelled in school. Nate grew up in a working class family, but Brendan's parents were wealthy. Despite their differences, they had one thing in common: They both wanted to look tough. We've already seen how Nate modeled himself after Tony Montana. Brendan also created his own gangster persona. He drove around town with a low-riding 93 Eldorado with tinted windows and tricked out rims. He used substances and acted the part. At first, the two stayed out of each other's way. Nate had his buyers, Brendan had his. But as Nate's business grew, their worlds collided. They were chasing the same customers, fighting for the same suppliers, and moving into each other's territories. Arguments turned into confrontations. Confrontations turned into threats. But Brendan,
this plot, bro, this shit should dead ass be a movie if it's not, bro.
He began to
They need to make this a movie. I would dead ass watch
Brendan
this.
Butler decided to do the unthinkable. He wanted to end Nate for good. By early 2002, Brendan started looking for a hitman. He found a man named Giovanni, also known as Gio. Gio wasn't a professional killer. He was a graphic artist who did hits as a side hustle.
Search it
Gio
up.
recruited two friends to help him with the job. Brendan's orders were clear. He wanted them to rob Nate and then end him. Brendan believed that taking Nate out would collapse the entire operation. The hitmen agreed to do the job for $100,000. Brendan gave them $5,000 up front. But what Brendan did next showed how much of a wannabe gangster he was. He went shopping with the hitman. Brendan joined Gio and his crew on a trip to Kmart. They bought black shoes, pants and gloves, and windbreakers, as well as tarps for disposing of the bodies. Brendan thought he was running the show. He even gave the crew tools for the job. But his plan was about to fall apart. It would become one of the worst fumbles in assassination history. In June 2002, the hitmen made their move. That same night, Brendan hosted a big alibi party so he couldn't be implicated. It could be used as evidence that he was somewhere else when the incident took place. Miles
Bro,
away,
why
the
this man
hitmen
dissing
broke into
me
the home of one
in
of
my
Nate's
Red Bull
close
sponsorship,
allies,
bro?
a guy called Scuzz. They
What's
robbed
up,
Scuzz
bro?
and then let him go. Afterward, they went straight to Brendan
What did
and
me and
split
Red Bull
the
do to
stolen
you?
cash. It was a catastrophic mistake. By robbing Nate's
Just watch the
ally, they
ad,
tipped
bro.
off Nate's entire crew. Everyone now knew someone was coming after them, and that's exactly what happened. When Nate heard about the robbery, he became paranoid. He didn't know who was behind it,
Well, I
but his
thought he'd be
operation
the
went on
smarter
high
one,
alert.
but I
Getting
guess
close
they're
to him
both as
became
dumb as each
nearly
other.
impossible,
Dumb and
and that's
dumber.
when
Yeah, bro, both of
everything
these niggas are
flipped.
fucking
Brendan started
stupid.
fighting with his own hitman. Brendan still
Now-
owed Gio $95,000.
Bro, the hitman literally finna slime this nigga out, bro. Literally, bro. I can already see
refused
it.
to pay until the job was done. But now Nate's crew was on edge, so getting to him was almost impossible. The job couldn't be done. Brendan kept feeding the hitmen information about Nate and his crew, but much of it turned out to be wrong information. Every failed attempt made them angrier. The tension built for months. Brendan and the hitmen argued constantly. By October 2002, everything boiled over. Brendan arranged to meet the hitmen in a remote campsite. He brought them there to show the men a remote location to dispose of the bodies. But at the meeting, they argued about money. According to police reports, Brendan's wannabe gangster persona apparently rubbed the group of actual gangsters the wrong way. Gio snapped. He got physical with Brendan and ended him on the spot. In
Told
a cruel twist of fate, Brendan
Told
Butler,
you.
Nate's biggest rival, was taken out by the very hitmen he hired to attack Nate. They dragged his body into the woods and left him beneath the trees. For almost a month,
I
no one
told
knew
you
what
they was gonna
happened to
slime this
Brendan.
nigga out,
His
bro.
wealthy parents launched an all-out search. Then a woodcutter stumbled across his remains deep in the woods. The discovery
bro.
shocked the entire town. Police launched a homicide investigation. They combed through Brendan's phone records and messages. That's when they found the hitman's number. Gio was now a suspect. Police arrested Gio and his crew in March 2003, about 5 months after the crime. The hitmen confessed. They told investigators everything: Brendan's pot operation, his rivalry with Nate, and the failed assassination plot. All the secrets were out. Police already noticed the surge of Canadian grass flowing into Idaho. Now there was a body on the ground. This wasn't a small town smuggling anymore. It was organized.
Yeah, bro, the
crime.
hitman
And
gonna
with
rat, bro.
Brendan gone,
Hitman
Nate
gonna
was
rat on
now
him, bro.
The undisputed kingpin.
The hitman
If
gonna rat
police
on this
could
other
bring
nigga,
him
bro,
down,
for
they
real.
could choke
And
off
tell
the
him why.
entire supply chain. From that moment,
Shit.
Nate had a massive target on his back. Pressure from all sides. In mid-2003, Nate's empire looked unstoppable on paper, but in reality, it was falling apart. After Brendan enforcement turned up the heat. Police
My nigga
began
Sector with the
running
red. What
surveillance
up,
on
bro,
Nate.
nigga? W fucking red. Everybody say W fucking red. I got it red again. Yeah. Shout out to everybody that's sliding through. Shout out to everybody that's following. What's good to all the fuck to all the Sector family and shit. Was good. Was good. Fuck you, Sector. I'll eat your ass. Yo, bro, don't mind him, bro. He autistic. Don't mind him, bro. He just like to say shit. He got like Tourette's and shit. Don't mind him, bro. Don't mind him. Hope y'all had a good stream though, for real. For real. Appreciate that raid again. It's mad love on guys.
Even
Mad
the
love.
FBI got involved. The cops wanted Nate. All they needed was proof.
Did you know
Agents
Sector got
followed
shot in the
cars,
leg?
phones were tapped,
Check
stash
DMs on
houses
Twitter.
were mapped.
Bet.
Nate and his guys were shaken, not just
Check-
because of the
Sector got
police,
shot in the
but
leg
mainly
by a
because
stray
of how
bullet
Brendan lost
and
his
survived.
For the first time, Nate
Holy
understood
fuck.
just how deep he was in. They realized this wasn't just
Fucking go.
kids smuggling grass anymore. They were in a world of hitmen, revenge, and violent rivals. And now the cops were watching everything. Most of Nate's network was made up of young teenagers. They weren't built for this kind of pressure. By April 2003, Nate and his crew made a decision.
I ain't gonna lie, y'all
Get out
trauma
while they
dumping
still
down
could.
Sector. What the
They
fuck
had
you be doing to
millions
these?
of dollars stashed away. If they moved fast,
What
they
the
could
fuck?
disappear. One of the boys rented a
What the
U-Haul and
fuck?
drove it to the mansion to start packing.
I
But they
appreciate
didn't
that
realize
follow.
the
I
cops
appreciate
were
everybody that's
surveilling
following me, bro. I
almost
appreciate
every house
that.
tied to Nate.
It's real
When they
love.
spotted the U-Haul, they knew what was happening. The kids were about to run. They couldn't let that happen. Police
Right
raided
now,
the
we
house.
watching
They
how
seized
this nigga went
weapons,
from a
cash,
pizza delivery
grass,
guy
and computers.
to
Everyone
Pablo
there was
Escobar.
arrested, but Nate and Topher weren't there. Under interrogation, the crew broke
Notorious
instantly.
West Virginia.
Everyone told on everyone. Some even became informants. And thanks to the information they gave
What's
up,
good, homie?
investigators built a much bigger case. By November 2003, police struck again. In one sweep, they made 14 arrests, including Scuzz.
Pablo
Topher,
is my
and others.
uncle.
They even arrested Nate's stripper girlfriend, Buffy.
Makes
but one
sense.
name was still missing: Nate Norman. With
Your
most of
uncle
his
really
crew
the
behind
GOAT. What
bars,
the
Nate
fuck?
disappeared. He was on the run for several months, but he couldn't run forever.
Good.
Eventually, Nate turned
Can't
himself
complain.
in. When police finally met Nate face to face, they
Can
were
you
stunned.
flex
A
for
reporter
us?
described the reaction. They were like, "This is the guy who orchestrated
Bro,
a
what are you
multi-million-dollar operation, and he looks like and
CJ
has the
a
job
bitch.
skills of a pizza delivery
I
boy." But
guess.
it wasn't truly over.
What the
Not
fuck?
Yet. Nate surrendered.
Nigga talking about flex for us, bro.
He hired expensive
Chill.
lawyers to fight the case.
Chill.
Multi-million
Chill out,
dollar
bro. Chill out, bro.
He's about to go head to head with federal prosecutors. The big question was,
Got
did
your
Nate
message?
actually get out of this?
CJ looked like an exotic hyena.
Nate
What
was
the
21
fuck?
when he went to court in 2004. The prosecution came down hard. Nate wasn't treated like a kid who made bad choices. He was portrayed as the kingpin of a drug empire. If Nate lost the case, he was facing 10 to 12 years behind bars. Prosecutors accused Nate's crew of smuggling $38 million worth of grass. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank records, pounds of seized product, and recorded conversations with the crew.
fuck?
But it got worse. Multiple members of Nate's own crew testified against him in exchange for lighter sentences. With the case
They
stacked
snitched
against
on
him,
bro!
Nate had no way out. He took
Fuck!
a deal pleading guilty to 5 of the 59 counts against him. Even with the deal, he knew he was trading his
Bro, this nigga is
freedom
cooked,
for
bro.
years behind bars. The judge sentenced
I don't blame him though,
12
bro.
years in
I
prison.
snitched
He
too.
would not
I'm
be eligible
don't give a
for parole
fuck.
until he served at least 10 years. Nate filed an appeal.
All right, I love you too. Bye.
It was rejected. Most of Nate's crew got
They're
much
children. What
lighter
you expect, bro? I don't give a
sentences.
fuck if I was a
Scuzz and
child
Topher
or an
each
adult.
received
Nigga, I'm
30 months.
snitching
The rest got
regardless.
between 30 and 46 months.
Yo, bro.
Gio, the hitman who ended.
I don't care how much pride you think you got. Let you be in that interrogation room and they put a fucking McChicken in front of your face with a large fry and a high C orange. Bitch, you're fucking going to snitch too. Dead ass serious. What the fuck? You are not as hard as you think.
Butler also
When you hear that
pleaded
life
guilty.
sentence
he was handed
slapped
a
on the
life
table?
sentence with a possibility of parole. in
Exactly.
10 years. It was a sad end to a crazy story. But Nate's fame.
Nah, this
didn't
nigga was
disappear
bound to fail
behind
from the
bars.
beginning,
If
though. I'm not
anything,
gonna lie,
the story
bro.
got bigger. While serving his sentence, Nate Norman became popular online. People were fascinated by how a small-town pizza delivery boy built a multi-million-dollar smuggling empire. They made documentaries, blogs, and podcasts
Nigga, is that-
dissecting his
is that
rise
Joe?
and
Is that Joe
fall. That
Balenciaga?
fascination eventually reached
What the
Hollywood.
fuck?
In 2014, filmmakers released a movie based on Nate's story. It was titled Kid Cannabis. It turned Nate into a cultural icon. But then,
Even
Nate
if
was
they let
free
me
to
free,
watch
I
it
snitch
himself,
gets me
because in
respect from the
December of
police.
2013,
Yo, bro,
Nate
I'm not
was
gonna lie.
released. This photo was taken by his
Who's gonna
parents when he came out of
tell?
prison. Today, Nate owns
Wait, hold on. They said it's a
eating
movie?
events
They said it's a movie? Hold on. Say on God.
podcasts dissecting his rise and fall. That fascination eventually reached Hollywood. In 2014, filmmakers released a movie based
Kid Cannabis. Oh, yeah, nah. I gotta watch this tonight. What, bro?
on Nate's story. It was titled Kid Cannabis. It turned Nate into a cultural icon. By then, Nate was free to watch it.
I dare gotta watch
in
that.
December 2013,
Where the fuck can I watch that
Nate
at?
was released. This photo was taken by his parents when he came out of prison.
Ah,
Today,
nah.
Nate owns a heating, ventilation, and air conditioning
Nah, he
business
got out of
and has
jail
a
too,
family.
bruh.
But the story didn't
Oh, no,
end
it's
well
dead
for
as a
Topher,
movie.
Nate's partner, the guy who helped him since the very first
It's
run.
on Tubi.
In 2019, Topher
It's
got
free.
into a fight at a bar. Things got physical. The other man pulled out a weapon. Topher lost his life.
Everyone is just shocked by
Damn,
Clark's
RIP.
death. He was well known, especially in North Idaho.
Nate Norman thought money would make people love him. And it worked for a while. But when you're only loved for what you have, you'll be alone when you lose it. Visual venture.
Oh, it's on YouTube too, bro.
If you thought creating a $38 million
Nah.
empire was crazy, there's a Boy Scout who turned into a $1.2 billion drug lord by creating the Amazon of drugs. Click right here
Damn.
to watch it. Thank you.
Damn, when they gonna make the Twitch streamer that turned into a $5.2 million? Never mind. Not even gonna let y'all know on that shit. His ass run an AC company, yeah, for sure. No, like you think when he got out, like, damn, nah, they probably took all his money. He probably actually like running like a legit business now.